Hello, and welcome to yet another edition of the Small Bear Show. I'm your host, Alex S. Johnson, aka a Small Bear, and my guest today, I have with me one of our contributing authors to Nocturnicorn Books. We just got him on board, and we're very fortunate to have him, Mr. J.G. Faherty. And welcome on board, sir.
No, thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. I was really, when I think I initially reached out to you about the Motorhead book, and I was really, I'm pleasantly surprised that you immediately responded and said, sure, because I think I did a search and I was sort of looking for like heavy metal horror authors, and your name came up, popped up on my list. And, we've had so the first book that we did was back in 2015. It was called Axes of Evil, Heavy Metal Horror Anthology. And that had people original work by people like Lucy Taylor. I converted Lucy Taylor to metal. I got Sefero Giron, whose name I can never correctly pronounce, right?
Sephra.
Sephora, yeah, Sephora, who's a lovely person. We had we had like Lucy, and we had Ray Van Horn Jr., who also worked with on Metal Maniacs magazine. And then last year I started working on the sequel, Hand of Doom, a literary tribute to Black Sabbath. And we got I mean, the roster. I mean, you've probably seen some of my posts, but we had original work by Paul M. Salmon, the guy who wrote Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner, and edited, Splatterpunk's, extreme horror, just a little
Right.
book like that, right? You have original work by like John Shirley, who was a primary screenwriter for a little known film called The Crow, and when he's not writing lyrics for a little known band called, Blue Oyster Cult. We have like about three or four more Bram Stoker award-winning authors, including my dear friend Anna Taborska. We had Christie Nogel on board, had Ai Zhang on board. And so it's incredible. And we partnered officially with Dr. Lois Lee of Children of the Night Incorporated, which is, started an organization that was started in Hollywood in 1979, right? And Dr. Lee has a PhD in sociology, and she's also an attorney, right? And she's fucking badass, right? She's in the trenches working to save, and rescue children who are being sex trafficked, right? I can't think of a nobler cause, especially in this day and age when we have, don't want to get too political, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
So, Mr. Faherty was born in New York's haunted Hudson Valley, which I'm really intrigued. I want to know more about that, and is now residing in North Carolina's equally haunted Cape Fear region. J.G. Faherty is the author of 25 novels. Check you out, man. Four collections and over 95 short stories. Wow. Damn. A two-time Bram Stoker Award finalist and ITW. What's ITW?
International thriller writers.
Oh, just a little, yeah, yeah. International Thriller Writers Award finalist. He writes adult and young adult horror, sci-fi, dark fantasy, and paranormal romance. And I want to get into that too. His work ranges from quiet suspense to comic grotesquerie, and he's a relative of Mary Shelley. So I want to get into that too. That's very interesting.
It's going to be a busy hour.
It is. Well, we don't have to limit it, but I don't, that depends on the guest. Like when I had Paul M. Salmon on, we we did it for a marathon, like 4 hour session. So Mr. Faherty joins the mythic roster of Nocturnicorn Books. I promised that I wasn't going to go into too much detail because it's going to take up, valuable time. But I will say, when I say mythical roster and literary and literal rock stars. I'm talking about fucking Jarbo, is one of our contributors, right? Ethan Morales, best known for his work with some, minor bands called like, Black Tape for a Blue Girl and Spawn Ranch, with Tara Van Flower from the band Lycia, which also collaborated with, you know, Typo Negative. We have David J. Haskins, the songwriter of Bela Lugosi's Dead, who's contributed. I'm talking about these people contributed original work, right? Original work. It's astonishing. I, a few months ago, I was asked by my old friend, Caitlin R. Kiernan, two-time World Fantasy Award and Bram Stoker Award winning author, finalist for the Shirley Jackson Award and the Nebula Award, to curate a literary tribute to her. And I was like, um, okay, Caitlin R. Kiernan, you know, I mean, right? And we've had original work by, Poppy Zebright, Billy Martin, wrote the foreword to our anthology, White and White, a literary tribute to Bauhaus, and also the introduction to The Junk Merchants, a literary tribute to William S. Burroughs. And I'm going to shift gears here. Ramsey Campbell is a contributor, John Shirley, John Pelisano, the list goes on and on. Um, uh, Carrie Lee Crum, who's the founder of a little known band called The Runaways, is also a contributor, a multiple contributor, and a collaborator with me. And so, if you've seen the movie The Runaways, starring Kristen Stewart and Dakota Fanning, you've heard the song California Paradise, which she wrote. Okay, so it's incredible. Like, I'm really fortunate and blessed, beyond words. I just thank the whatever dark gods, that I've had the privilege and the fortune to know people like Lemmy, to spend time with Lemmy and Dee Snider and you know, uh, Dio and stuff like that. So without further ado, okay, so we have the author of HELLRIDER, and the first thing I thought was like, HELLRIDER rocks the night, right? Okay,
You even emailed me about it.
priest, you know, yes. So tell me about HELLRIDER.
So, Hellrider was an interesting concept that I had. Um, I wanted to write something kind of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And years before that, I had done a book called The Burning Time. And
Hmm.
I got the idea for that book listening to the John Fogerty song, The Old Man Down the Road.
Interesting.
And of course, I couldn't use the lyrics. I actually got to meet him, spoke to him,
Oh, wow.
couldn't use the lyrics, but I did give him a copy of the book. But so what I had to do was create my own song that was similar to that and
John
captured
Fogerty.
the,
Wait a
yeah,
minute. Well, let's back up the truck. Okay, so John Fogerty of Creedence
Creedence
Clearwater
Clearwater.
Revival. So how did that happen, man?
So he wrote a book.
Yeah.
And what had happened was when I was writing my book, I wrote to his management company
Hmm.
and said, I had this idea of doing this book based on this song.
Yeah.
Can I get permission to use some of the lyrics?
Yeah.
And as happens often, I did not hear from them. So I created my own lyrics. And then a couple of years later, he was doing a book signing in the town over from me. So I
Yeah.
went to the book signing. It was his autobiography. And I said, John, please sign my book. By the way, here's a book signed by me that I wrote because
Nice.
of you.
Nice.
And he was intrigued by that. So we
Yeah.
chatted for a little while. And he took the book and he even actually went online and said, I read this book. It was really good. So after that, I wanted to write a real heavy metal rock and roll book.
Yeah.
And Hellrider came to me um, while listening to Judas Priest's uh, what the heck?
Killer, right?
Painkiller.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Because, even the cover there, it's got him on the motorcycle and
Right.
everything. And so I started writing my own. I didn't even try really contacting them. I started
Yeah.
writing my own lyrics um, of a song similar to Painkiller.
Yeah.
And then I remembered I've got a friend, Richard Christie. He was in, he owns Charred Walls of the Damned.
Wasn't he in Death or no? I'm
Yes, he
thinking
was the drummer for Death.
he was the drummer for Death. Oh my God.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Oh my
he's
God.
amazing. He's
Oh my God.
amazing.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So,
Fanboying here. Right.
so he had blurbed a couple of my books because he's a
Yeah.
big horror fan, and I met him through Brian Keene.
Oh, nice. Yeah, wow.
So I
Cool.
said, Richard, I got this idea, blah, blah, blah. Can I use some of the lyrics from one of your Charred Walls of the Damned songs? Because
Yeah.
I wanted the book not to just only have my fake lyrics,
All
but
right.
real lyrics from other songs.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
he's like, dude, I would be so honored. He goes,
Oh, fuck
you
yeah.
can use
Fuck yeah.
anything you want.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I ended up using four different songs
That's
in
amazing.
the course of the book, and they open each chapter.
Nice.
So, not, I'm sorry, each section.
Okay.
There's four
Okay. Yeah.
sections. So HELLRIDER is about this guy who's in a motorcycle gang
Right.
and he wants to get out.
Yeah.
He's tired of living the criminal life, and it takes place down in the Everglades in Florida. Um, so when he quits, he goes and he turns state's evidence on the rest of the
Ooh.
gang. Yeah. And they don't like that. So they burn him alive in his garage.
Hmm.
And he dies on his motorcycle trying to escape,
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
and then comes back to life as a ghost with his
Good.
motorcycle.
Good. I like
So
what we're saying here.
he like starts zooming around town, but he's trapped within the town confines.
Yeah.
And in the course of that, he realizes he can possess people. And when he possesses them,
Mhm.
he can get them to do anything he wants. He's
I like
totally
it.
in control. So
Yeah.
one by one, he starts taking over all the people that were in that murdered him and
Yeah.
causing them to commit suicide or other murders or whatever in
Wow.
really gruesome, graphic ways.
Nice.
But he's also going insane at the same time.
Yeah.
So things are getting just more and more deranged as the book goes on. I always tell people it's like if Quentin Tarantino and
Oh.
Robert Rodriguez did Sons
Oh,
of
my
Anarchy.
heart.
It's
Oh,
total
my
splatter.
heart. My heart, man.
Yeah.
This
It's
you're talking
definitely like
my language.
my only grindhouse book that I ever wrote.
Okay, so you just answered my question. My next question was going to be who would direct the movie?
Oh, definitely Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
Yeah, I would take him over
Rodriguez.
Tarantino only because Tarantino would talk too much.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, and Tarantino would want to be in the movie himself, right?
Oh, that would be fine as long as he
That would be
died.
fine. Well, yeah. Okay, so speaking of people dying, speaking of famous film directors dying, so one of my, claims to fame is that I wrote a official spin-off novel of Friday the 13th. It's like considered canonical, even though most people hate it. It's called Jason X Death Moon, right? And I wrote it with Pat Cadigan, and it came out from New Line Cinema and Black Flame Books back in the 2005, right? And one of the things that I loved about this, first of all, I'm the world's biggest Pat Cadigan fan. So I was like awestruck. It was like,
She's
holy shit.
great.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I get to work with Pat Cadigan. Holy fucking shit. And so long story about how that came about. But I so Jason X, I mean, it's a fun movie. It's a silly movie. A lot of people criticize my book because they didn't realize they hadn't read Pat Cadigan, and they didn't realize how much, how many jokes there are in those books, and how, and she's a hardcore, I mean, she's a real science fiction writer,
Right.
but she obviously, her attitude was sort of like, it's work for hire. I'm not going to spend like, the exert the energy that I'm going to be putting into writing, like a book with, William Gibson, for example, on this, and it's fun too. Anyway, one of the things I really enjoyed about the movie is all the Easter eggs. One of the Easter eggs, which I don't think I've ever heard anybody talking about, is the fact that the theme music for Jason X, Jason X is literally Hellraiser. If you listen to it, it's Christopher Young's Hellraiser, right? By And it was written by the guy who wrote the original, theme music for Friday the 13th, Henry Manfredini, right? But it's Hellraiser. It's Christopher Young's score, right? So you're thinking, it's got that kind of like Stravinsky, not Stravinsky, but that kind of iconic kettle drum roll from also Sprach Zarathustra, right?
Right, like a death version of John Williams.
Exactly. Bingo. You got it. Yes. And then within the first 15 minutes of Jason X, you know, um, David Cronenberg is horribly murdered by Jason Voorhees. And I was like, oh my God, this is so, it has so many connections with I'm obsessed with William S. Burroughs. And so I was like, holy fucking shit, man. They just killed David. It's like South Park. You killed Kenny. You just killed David Cronenberg. And man, and then that's it. That's my story. That's totally irrelevant to what you were talking about, I think.
But that's okay. People
Yeah.
died.
People died is the main thing. People died. And you killed them off, man. So when speaking of painkiller, so I wrote a book. Well, it was going to be a full-fledged novel, but I didn't get far beyond. I wrote two stories in the saga of Makami, and I have a character who's half Japanese, part Japanese. And what was her name? Rika. Rika, who is it's a I won't go into the plot, but it's about it's about this I'll read from the back. Two stories originally published in Cellar Door 3, Animals and Rejected for Content 2, Aberrant Menagerie, relate the story of an American film student who becomes embroiled in an age-old war between a Japanese werewolf clan and the Dark Lord Kagamusha, which is a film by, um, Kurosawa, right? And so, you know, one of the scenes is basically so this the Rika, who's the Japanese woman, she she rescues her lover, um, uh, who's the Fiona, by driving her motorcycle like down this plank and sort of busting into this compound that's that's presided over by these demons and sort of vampires and so forth. Complicated story. But the way I originally wrote it, it was sort of like the cover of Painkiller. I wanted to have her motorcycle be adopted, so it's sort of partially, it's like a biomechanical thing, so it's partially
Right.
alive, and it's embedded with actual flesh, and it's got, organic, components, and it's got the circle saw blade, slash wheel. So I just want to talk about like how, because I want to ask you something. So I think, for me, that the desire to write heavy metal horror began very early when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I'm 59, so I'm going to be 59 on Halloween. And I think there was the two foundational um, um, foundational influences on my work, Stephen King and um, and metal, specifically Black Sabbath.
No, because Ozzy was the first to be writing like that.
Exactly. And
Well, I
he
shouldn't say that.
right.
Geezer was the first to be writing like
Geezer. Yeah, you're exactly. And so when I was in high school, I started writing songs, or actually, I also wrote songs, but I wrote some stories like that were, inspired by, like Die Young or whatever, and never in a million years. I mean, I was like 13, 14 years old. Never in a million years would I ever think that one day, it's sort of like, the pick of destiny, right? I moved to LA. You know, I wound up hanging out not only with people like Craig Spector, and David J. Scow and R.C. Matheson, you know, and Paul M. Salmon, but like spending time at the Rainbow and meeting Lemmy and just hanging out with Lemmy like it was no big deal, right? And interviewing Dio, not once but twice. And those interviews are in the magazine Black Diadem, magazine of the Fantastique, which you are in, alongside,
Okay.
Shirley, right? Bright, Kiernan, etc. Iris Berry, shout out to Iris Berry. And so, anyway, um, for me, the first album that, you know, when I heard the ads for Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, I was a fan of Ozzy. I mean, how could you not be? But
Right.
this is back in the 70s where there wasn't there wasn't heavy metal and hard rock or whatever. You listen to The Who, you listen to Black Sabbath, Thin Lizzy, right? All these bands, Motorhead, they were all rock and roll, right? And then it was almost like this paradigm shift. And I heard this ad on the radio because we didn't have like, you know, we didn't have anything. We just had like, electric typewriters, I think had just come in, right? And it was like Black Sabbath takes you on a musical journey through heaven and hell. And I get chills just thinking about it, And then that iconic riff, man, that like from the riff master himself, Tony Iommi, who is actually Red Hand of Doom. You know, it's just, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you respect, right? And that down, 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 and just like sends chills up your spine. It's like, what is this thing, right? And they had a new singer, the guy from a band called Rainbow. And I was like, who is Ronnie James Dio? And all of a sudden, this guy is like, he was what, 5'5" or 5'4" or something,
Actually, I think he was a little shorter than that because
Really,
he,
yeah.
he always had heels on.
He always had heels on. Yeah,
Yeah. I think he was either 5'2" or 5'3".
exactly. And
Yeah.
I was at this Dio gig in 1997, and I heard somebody saying, like, okay, have you heard this one? Why is the microphone set so low? Oh, Dio's in town. And it just blew me away. And it's sort of like there's something about that. I didn't even know that Ronnie was a huge fan of like Lord of the Rings and dark fantasy, and he was and hobbits and Asterix and Obelix and all that kind of good stuff, right? All I knew was this was something different. You know, um, Ozzy had this kind of a blurry wail to him. He seemed like you wanted to comfort him or give him a hug because he's facing inner demons, right? Dio, on the other hand, may be a sorcerer and a master of demons. You didn't know with Dio. He could be literally a magician, right? That's how I felt. And I still feel that way. And I wanted to ask you, what was your experience? Like, what was the first song or album or performance where you said, that's it, I want to do this?
I can narrow it down to a couple.
Okay.
Um, I can remember as a kid, and I'm a few years older than you.
Okay.
I'm going to be 65 next
No
year.
way.
Yeah. So I remember as a kid, again in the 70s, early 70s, um, at my grandparents' house for the summer, and they only had an AM radio, and it was a college station that would come in,
Yeah.
and you'd hear I mean, their shifts are only 2 hours long, so you'd
Yeah.
hear all different stuff throughout the day. So I just remember I was listening to something, it might have been like the Beatles or Elton John or something
Right.
like that. And then the next song that came on was Iron Man.
Holy shit.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Right?
I was 11 at the time,
Oh no.
and I'm like, holy crap, I've never heard anything like this. So as
Oh
soon
my
as I got
God.
home,
Yeah.
um, back to, because that was upstate New York, I got back home to downstate New York, and immediately had my parents take me to the record store. I have to look up
Yeah.
Black Sabbath. I mean,
Right.
I
Right.
was already into music and collecting albums and stuff,
Yeah.
but I needed Black Sabbath. So I got a couple of their first two albums, and then I still was mostly a radio listener.
Sure.
Um, so you'd hear all different stuff, and if I heard something I liked on the weekends, I could get taken not just to the bookstore, but to the record store. And then when I was, I'm going to say 14 or 15, somewhere in there, because I remember I wasn't driving yet, but I was in high school. A friend of mine turned me on to Blue Oyster Cult.
Nice.
And the first song I heard was Cities on Flame,
Yeah.
which is, according to some people who, depending on,
Yeah.
your argument, was it them, was it Black Sabbath, or was it Bachman Turner Overdrive,
Yeah.
creating the original lyric heavy metal.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Steppen
so
Steppenwolf also had that.
Steppenwolf, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Randy Bachman was in Steppenwolf.
Exactly.
So I remember at that moment, that was when I became a heavy metal fan. There was something about Blue Oyster Cult
Right.
that turned that switch in me,
Yeah.
and I had to go out and get all the albums.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've seen them, I don't know, a couple of dozen times.
The jealousy is
Got
real.
to party with them backstage and stuff
Damn.
at a concert. But it was them, and then from them, my friends and I kind of expanded out into other heavy metal stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so we were listening to Elf before Dio joined
Wow.
Rainbow. Obviously, we knew Deep Purple, so we knew Blackmore. So when Rainbow's first album came out,
Of
we
course.
were waiting in line for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh, and then, when he was with Sabbath, when he was
Right.
on his own, and from there expanding out and just getting into all the different stuff. So there was,
Yeah.
British heavy metal, Iron Maiden rules.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, they
Yeah.
are the gods.
They are the
No
gods.
one's better. Um, and then you had, them, Deep Purple, you had Sabbath, then you had Blue Oyster Cult and a couple of the other American bands doing something like that.
Yeah.
And then you got into that second wave, which was Motorhead, Metallica, Anthrax, all those
Yeah.
different bands.
Yeah. Single best concert experience.
That's going to be so tough, and it's going
I
to be
know.
funny.
Yeah.
The first time I saw Blue Oyster Cult was at a local community college, and it was when they were doing the Spectres tour.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that album had only been out for a couple of weeks, so the only song anybody knew was Godzilla. You're in a community college. The stage is only about 8 feet, maybe 6 feet high,
Nice.
and there's no seating. You're just standing in
Oh
there.
wow.
I had my hands on the stage right by Eric Bloom's feet
Holy shit.
for the final encore, which they back then they always did Born to Be Wild.
Yeah.
Everybody in the band at that time played the guitar.
Right.
So for Born to Be Wild, they all come out, five guitar players,
Nice. Yeah.
amplifiers everywhere, and they use nothing but big Marshall stacks.
Yeah.
So, it's like the old commercial for, I think it was Panasonic or something, the guy in the chair with the hair
Max
blowing
Bell.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then they light off all of these magnesium flares. My hair was singed. I was blind for half the
Oh my
song.
God.
So that was a great experience. Um, I've seen Dio, Priest, Motorhead, a whole bunch of these people.
Yeah.
Springsteen, I saw him do a 4 hour show one time,
Me too.
nonstop. I mean, it was
The best,
amazing.
the boss is the single best concert I ever saw.
He does some
Bar
great
none.
stuff,
Bar none.
some great
The
stuff.
boss.
and I think I've seen him 13 times.
Holy shit. The
Um,
jealousy is real.
Spoke to him on the phone once
Damn.
when I was in college. The guy that lived across the hall from me, his older sister was giving Springsteen's sister horseback riding lessons.
Oh shit.
So he used to go, because he was into electronics, he used to go sit in on their sound checks
No
and
way.
stuff. So we were on a committee, I'll make it short. We were on a committee to get bands to play at the school.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, I'm going to call Bruce."
I'm gonna
And
call
we're all
Bruce
like,
just
"Yeah,
like it's no big deal,
bullshit."
right? Yeah, right.
He picks up the phone, hall phone, because we didn't have cell phones back
Yeah.
then, dials,
Ah,
and he calls Roy Bittan, the
ah.
piano player. And he's like, "Roy, we want to get you guys to play at our school. We know you played here a couple of years ago. We want to see if you could do it again." And he's like, "Hold on, we're actually having practice right now." He goes, "Let me put Bruce on the phone."
Ah, ah.
So now he's talking to Bruce, and I'm standing there, and I still don't believe him.
Right,
He
yeah.
hands me the phone. He goes, "My friend wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Hello? Hey, man, I wish we could play, but we can't." I'm like,
Right, yeah.
"It's really cool to talk to you." And I
Right,
handed the phone.
yeah.
Only time in my life I was ever starstruck. Um, but I am going to temper all this with a funny statement. Earlier this year, for the first time, I went and saw Weird Al Yankovic in concert.
Okay.
2.5 hours of nonstop showmanship,
Nice.
musically, artistically, video stuff.
Yeah.
I was stunned. If
Yeah.
anybody here wants to see a fantastic show, go see Weird Al.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I know that. Yeah.
As far as just best pure guitar playing,
Yeah.
Michael Schenker.
Michael Schenker. Yeah. No
Yeah,
doubt. No doubt.
yeah. I mean, I've seen him convert many people to his music just because of how he plays in concert.
Yeah, speaking of Schenker, I actually one of my this goes way back, but I actually got to interview Uli John Roth,
Oh, okay.
Ulrich Roth, because I mean I consider him one of the greats, of all time, right?
Very interesting style.
Yeah, very, very, yeah, cool. It's like one of the things so one part of the magic, and maybe this is just I don't know what it comes from, the resonance of these names, even when I was a kid and I would read, like Guitar Player, I subscribed to Guitar Player and stuff. And just some of these names, they felt so exotic, like, Michael Schenker and Ulrich Roth, and there was just something about them, whatever, like there's no point to that story.
No, but it's and a lot of time it's like you build that image in your head, and then when you meet them,
Yeah.
they're just down to earth, ordinary people.
They're really so this is funny. Who's the guy? He was I think he was a bassist for he played with King Diamond. Um you know what I'm talking about. Is a really tall was he is he Swedish or you know who I'm talking about. Okay, I've gone out on a limb here and
I'm not going to remember the name.
okay. So this is a bad anecdote. Oh, okay. Well, it's tied in with an anecdote. Okay, Carl from Nile. You heard Nile?
No,
Oh, Nile. Okay, Nile is a pretty badass death metal band. Oh, this is good. Oh, I feel better already about this anecdote that I'm going to tell you because it's embarrassing. Okay, so Carl, he's also does some classical metal stuff. Carl, forget his last name. Hi, Carl. From this band Nile. I think they were on Metal Blade Records at the time. Okay. And so I went out to see, actually, I didn't go out to see them. I was there to see, I had just done an interview with like Angela Gasso from, who was formerly with Arch Enemy, right? And there was a whole bunch of other bands on the ticket. And so there's this. this guy, and he sees my, Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, t-shirt, because I was writing for them for years. And he says, "You look like a journalist." He's behind the security cordon, right? And I said, "Yeah." And I had no idea who he was, and I said, "Hey, so you must be one too, right?" He said, "Well," and then sort of he let me down slowly that, basically he was the headliner, right? Now was the headliner, and I sort of course corrected, and I sort of, pretended that I knew that all along and I was just playing, right? I said, "Oh yeah, I love your stuff." I actually was a fan, but I didn't recognize him and I didn't even know his name, because I used to get like hundreds of promos from,
Right.
Century Media, and the thing. And so then I needed to get backstage to talk to, was it, I don't know if it wasn't King Diamond, but it was maybe Angela Gasso. I don't know. It's, long story. And or Eric Rutan from, Hate Eternal. Right. So um I'm trying to talk to the security guy. He's, I'm invisible to him. You can be invisible. And so yeah, I was. And then so all of a sudden this gorgeous, incredibly hot, woman, comes up and she says, "Hey, I need to get backstage." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do too." And she said, "Let's let's collaborate, right?" So um she says, "I'm with this band, The Birthday Party, I think it's called, right?" And she's and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know who they were. Was it Nick Cave or something like that, right? And so
It Cave in the Bad Seed?
it was something like that, right? And
Ah,
so
wow.
I said, "Okay, so let's do something." So we go up to the security guard, who still, this is the same thing that happened when I read out with Iris Berry, I'm invisible. They're just like, "Holy shit," you know, and immediately this guy's entire worldview changed because there's this really, really hot, woman, and she needed to get backstage. And so immediately it was sort of like the red carpet was cleared, and suddenly we're backstage and we're, hanging out with members of like Merciful Fate, and you know what I mean? And the guy, it'll come to me afterwards, but the bassist, I think he played with, it wasn't Rudy Sarzo, but he played with Mercy and a bunch of other cool bands. And I think he's a Swedish guy. And so this woman, who I don't know, I mean, she's probably just a groupie or something, definitely a groupie, right? And she says that she's selling shoes. So, and she wants me to talk to the bassist for Merciful Fate about her shoes. So this all this is, I'm sort of piggybacking on your, like, these people are just like regular folks. I mean, most of them
Right.
are, Lemmy was the most down to earth dude, and everybody like Mickey D and, Phil Campbell, they were just great people. So so I go up to this guy, the bassist for Mercy, and I was like, "Do you like shoes?" I felt like such an idiot, but and he says, "Sure." And he says, "Well, I got this woman here. And she's and she's got some shoes for you, And it was so weird. And afterwards, I was like, What the hell, Alex? What's wrong with you? But it just kind of, there's something kind of like uncanny about that whole world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the writing world is very similar to that.
right.
When you talk to fans of books and stuff, they're like, "Oh my God, you know this one, you know that one." I'm like, "Yeah, they're just regular people who
They
have a
really
different
are.
job than
They
most.
they have a
That's
different
all."
job than most. I mean, like people like are astonished that I'm, have been friends with, Billy Martin and Caitlin R. Kiernan for like 30 years, but I'm like, yeah, well, I
You
mean,
meet them, you become friends.
they're good people. They're
Right.
really charming, old-fashioned Southern manners. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
gentle people. And I know a lot. I mean, really, really close to, I'm not bragging, it's just like the truth. And I'm really close to people like Anna Taborska, the sweetest person you will ever meet. Just the kindest person and really, and she's so modest, that she doesn't, like, I asked if she wanted to be on my show, and she's like, oh, I don't know, I get anxious, I'm not sure, no, I don't want to do it. I'm so sorry, it's so terribly sorry. She sends me these emails where she apologizes for not having enough original material that I can publish. And I'm like, oh my God, Anna Taborska, you have no idea what that means to me, right? And so, yeah, I want people to know that of all the people, I mean, there are some total, I won't say the word, but it rhymes with runts in the business. I won't name, but by and large, I mean, Brian Keene has been really good to me, Jonathan Maybury, you know, I, John Shirley, it has said some spectacular things about my work, which I'm still like in denial about. It's like there's no way. The Baudelaire of our time. Okay, get the fuck out, John Shirley, right? But so I want to talk about more about your work. I want to talk about the paranormal romance because I don't think that seems counterintuitive coming from a metal guy, right?
Well, I like to read a lot of different stuff,
Yeah.
and I think that influences the fact that I like to write a lot of different stuff. For the romance stuff that I've done, most of it is for the YA audience.
Hmm.
Um, I guess you could say it's like the equivalent of that Twilight kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've done some that's paranormal with ghosts. I've done some that's sort of like science fiction. I've done a couple of high fantasy short stories involving
Mhm.
teenagers. Um, I, I grew up as a kid and then a teen and then an adult reading stuff. So, I think it's just natural that sometimes I want to write it too. It's
Yeah.
a big audience,
Right.
uh, you know, and it's nice to get them involved in it. I've taught genre writing for teenagers
Nice.
at multiple libraries. So I don't think there's a big difference between um, writing for the YA group and writing for adults. A couple of basic rules that you follow, in YA, you don't want to see them pulling out the intestines. You just kind of gloss over that.
Yeah.
Um, and the old rule that you couldn't be too graphic about the sex, that's gone out the window.
Right.
YA is worse than adult now when it comes to
Really?
that kind of, oh yeah. Yeah, they're especially like mainstream YA when it's like not uh, genre, but it's more uh, I guess you could call it women's books, but it's for teenagers.
So if not to be too explicit, but although we could, so could you give me some examples of like acts that you can describe or in these young adult books?
In a young adult book, you can describe them having sex. You can describe them having oral sex.
Wow.
You can talk about that kind of. The only thing you can't do is describe it the way you would if you were writing pornography.
For
So
example.
that's where the difference is. But YA today will frequently have more detailed sexual descriptions than if you picked up a Stephen King book.
Wow, because that's a good thing to know because I really want to write YA stuff, but I actually started a science fiction story with my dear friend Jan Steckel, it's a Lambda Literary Award winning author and by rights, activist, right? And I wanted to write a story that would be like a young adult, it's like a science fiction story, but from a queer perspective. But I was like, "Ah, can you do that? I mean, can you do that? Are people gonna look askance at you. And so it's good to
As
know
long
that
as
you
you keep
can.
it to an R rating.
Or reading. That's I can keep it well within. Wow. So, I wanted to ask you about The Craft because, well, the movie is one of my favorites too, but the craft of writing because I started out when I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I've been writing since I was 7, and I started subscribing to Writer's Digest, right? I would just consume it, I would just, oh, they have a new interview with King, right? Man, that was for me. And I learned by, I guess, absorbing. I didn't really study. I took one creative writing class as an undergrad, and I got a C, in it, right? But, and yeah, so actually, one of my stories was based on the Black Sabbath song Zero the Hero. It was called Zero the Hero, right? You know who wound up writing that? I think I did, but I got so this is I'm gone off the rails on a crazy train now. But okay, so you know, in my wildest imagination, I never would have thought that I could commission John Shirley to write "Lonely is the Word." The word "Lonely is the Word," an original story, right? I mean, I just want to sit with that. Because he is a non-performing member of Blue Oyster Cult, in addition to being having several of his own bands, as you know, right? The Screaming Geezers and Panther Panther Moderns, and writing songs like, you know, Power Underneath Despair, which is a great anthem, right? I just derailed myself. So, okay, backing up. Um, so a lot of people now, I think, they don't who were born, you know, who I mean, we've been, you're about 10 years, or not 10 years older, but terrible at math, at about 6 years older than I am, and or 6 or 7 years older. We're basically the same age. And, but a lot of people who are coming up, I see a lot of names, new names, and they weren't even born when the Splatterpunks had just come on the scene. The new horror, Clive Barker, Lucy Taylor, Charlie Jacob, um, R.C. Matheson, and oh, they don't know like the grandfathers, like Richard Matheson, um,
Hmm.
they they don't even know Poppy Z. Bright. Some of them don't even know that Poppy Z. Bright is Billy Martin, you know. And it's what I always say is that you need to read widely. You can't just read. I mean, so I was an English professor. You can't just read like Bizarro. You can't just read, you know, your friends. You know what I mean? You have to read the classics. And what's your philosophy about writing, influence, inspiration, and the craft?
I believe that you can't really produce consistently good work and original work, um, without knowing where the genre came from. You do need to read the masters.
Yeah.
For us growing up, we read Stoker, we read Shelley, we read
Yes.
Verne, we read the guys from the 30s and the 40s,
Right.
Lovecraft, we read,
Lovecraft, Clark Aston
Robert Bloch,
Smith,
all of
and
these
Robert
people.
Bloch. Yeah.
Um, and then, like for me, I was in my teens and early 20s when Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Peter Straub, all those guys were, you know,
Yeah.
the kings of the craft.
Right.
So of course, reading that, and that's a big influence. When I started writing, it was purely by accident.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was purely by accident. I had a job that I had taken writing study guides. Yep.
Yeah.
um, writing study guides for the Princeton Review, and that included writing the reading passages and then the questions.
Nice.
And the guy, the editor, he said, you've got a real knack for this. I'm like, oh. He goes, you should try your hand maybe at, writing short stories or something.
What year was this?
1999.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so when I was just turning 40 at 2001, I did write a short story for a book that was coming out that was looking for ghost stories,
Hmm.
and it got accepted. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. You can make some money doing this,
Nice. Yeah.
Um, and somehow I heard about a local convention that was going to be in my county for science fiction writers. And I said, all right, I'll go to that. And while I was there, I met Jeannie Cavallos. And I showed her some of my stuff, and she's like, this is really good. She goes, I'm going to be doing an anthology on Van Helsing.
Oh,
She goes,
wow.
you should submit. And I'm like, that's great. When is it due?
Yeah.
And she said, you've got 4 days.
Holy shit.
So I went home and I wrote a Van Helsing story in 4 days.
Wow.
Now, at that time, I was not a member of any horror organization. I didn't know any horror writers other
Right.
than Jeannie.
Yeah.
So I sent it to her and I didn't hear back for a while. And then she wrote me and she goes, I just want you to know you were the last rejection. She goes, you almost made it in. She goes, if you had probably had some time to edit it and do some other stuff,
Yeah.
she goes, we might have even taken it. She goes, but you were going to have a career in this. Don't stop.
Oh my God.
So I said, okay. And she said, you need to join the Horror Writers Association. You need to
Yeah.
do this. You need to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so I did. And my first horror convention was then a year later. And I met a whole bunch of people. Like I walked out onto a balcony and
Yeah.
Jack Ketchum and Peter Straub were standing
Oh,
out
nice.
there.
Nice.
And, Jack walks up to me. He's like, you better drink scotch. Have one. So I
Yeah.
just remember one night sitting in a hotel room at like 3 in the morning, drinking scotch
Yeah.
with Tom Monteleone, Paul
Right.
Wilson,
Yeah.
and Stephen Jones,
Right. Yeah.
and them telling me, you know, you need to stand on the shoulders of the people behind you to move forward,
Right.
and you always need to pay it forward.
Right.
And they sat there and they said, we are going to help you in any way possible because that's what we do.
That's beautiful.
And they did over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what we see, and I was just talking to Steve Jones about this a few months ago, he was rejected as a guest of honor or even a guest spot at World Horror when
What?
it was in Canada
What?
because they felt that he had nothing to offer.
Okay, so back up the truck, man. We're talking about Stephen Jones.
Right.
Right. Yeah. He's a friend of mine. That's appalling. What
Yep.
the shit, man?
So it's just like, and we were commiserating about it and saying, because I see the same thing when I go to conventions. Um, and when you talk to people online and you see the people talking online, I've had people say to me, you can't learn anything from anybody over the age of 50. You can't learn anything, we don't want to do what you did. We're going to make our own path. And I find it disheartening,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I also see that it's great that just like in music and
Yeah.
writing, age doesn't matter. You can still keep producing great stuff. And that's all you can do is just write and put it out there. And, you know, we still get published. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there. Um, the industry itself is changing rapidly, and not just with AI, but
Yeah.
with how publishing is done and everything. I've had multiple publishers over the years go out of business.
Yeah.
You just keep plugging along.
You just keep plugging, right?
Yep. And I think that you have to learn from the people behind you, just like I think that people who've been writing a long time, like us, should also read new authors.
I agree.
Because I mean, one of the things I do is I mentor for
For
mystery writers,
Safwa
science
or
fiction
yeah,
writers,
yeah.
and the HWA.
And
And
Safwa, you remember Safwa, right? Yeah.
oh yes, Seth and
Yeah.
I go
Uh,
back to like 2001.
what oh so I said Safwa maybe like Safwa like science fiction fantasy writers are
Oh, SFWA. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so it's
yeah,
like I love what I see from these people.
right.
It's not real um, clean. It's not real, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not ready for publication yet.
Yeah,
Um, but the ideas, I mean, are amazing. And when I teach for high school kids, they come up with some of the craziest, most original stuff. And
yeah,
I try to encourage them. I'm like, keep writing, keep writing.
yeah.
Don't listen to your parents ever.
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as far as the craft of writing goes, I've the only creative writing courses I ever took were two Borderlands boot camps
Okay,
with
so
Tom Monteleone
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Paul Wilson and those guys.
Sure.
Um, other than that, I mean, I don't have like an MFA or anything.
Yeah. Well, I think that that can kind of hold you back in a way. I mean, not to discount the value of MFA or workshops like the what's it, the Clarion workshop. So I
Mhm.
actually this is a really interesting fact, a couple of things like I actually went to high school with Betsy Aoki, and I think she wound up, writing for like Asimov's and she asked me out, on a date when I was like 18 years old, And I would anyway, long story about that. But it's really beautiful, when you're another thing that's kind of cool, little anecdote, like I had a girlfriend who wound up being a became an English professor, and she actually has a PhD. I don't have a PhD at Pasadena City College, and her name is Kate Lonsdale, right? And she didn't wind up being a writer, although I think she still aspires, right? And but we would watch, or listen to like Bauhaus and Bowie and this bands and we'd watch The Hunger, right? It's like, you know, and this like blows my mind. I mean, last year I touched base with, David J. Haskins, right? The man himself, and because I was soliciting for my Bauhaus, I mean not my Bauhaus, that came later, but the William S. Burroughs tribute, because I'd read that David was a huge fan of like William S. Burroughs, right? And a lot of the Bauhaus song lyrics are actually cut ups. If you listen to them carefully, it's like, well, also, I mean, because Bowie, right? Because Bowie, who was also a friend of Burroughs, and there's all these interesting connections, right?
Yep.
And I asked, I said, hey, David, I'm a huge, like, Bauhaus are iconic as for millions of people, right? They're they're sort of genre defining, you know, and Love and Rockets, and all this other side projects. And I said, I would be honored if you would write something for me. I didn't expect anything. It was much far less an original poem, you know? And I was like, about 3 days later, 2 or 3 days later, he emails me, he says, will this do? Or something like that, in a very kind of you know, low key kind of British way. And I was sort of like, um, this is this original poem by Jay from, like he wrote like Stigmata Martyr and and you know and Silent Hedges and I was like, oh wow, thank you. And I tried to pay him and he was like, what's this? So then more recently, this is about what, a month or couple of months ago, that my partner, her name is Aaliyah Celeste Williams. You may have seen references to pickles. And she's in all of my anthologies now. And she lives in southern rural Michigan in a town called Monroe, Michigan, right? And um, more recently, so I didn't realize so many people were from Monroe or adjacent. Her friend, who's a DJ and a producer who won like a Grammy Award, um, and I'm blanking on his name, but anyway, his name sounds like a mafioso guy because that was the whole idea. He's a Hispanic guy, and I'm blanking on his name. But more recently, I met a woman named Natasha Lynn Nichols in a Facebook group called Elder Gus. And I was like, hey, I'm Alex S. Johnson. I do this and that. And this is one of my anthologies, White and White, a literary tribute to Bauhaus. And it had all these names, and Jarrow, Carrie Lee Crum, Ethan Maroulis, forward by Poppy Z. Bright, Billy Martin, Caitlin R. Kiernan, John Shirley, John Palisano, etc. You know, these are genre-defining names. And she said, wow, that's cool. More recently, she hooked up with another, you know, person who lives quite near my partner. His name is Zachary Gene Betts. And they had actually been the first time they were in the same, same location or whatever together was at a Bauhaus show. And he was working for Beggar's Banquet. Now he's gone on to, collaborate with, people from Prong. He was there with, Keith Levine from, Public Image Limited and The Clash. He collaborated with him. And, David J. Haskins he works closely with him. They're collaborators. So now, you would see this is astonishing, right? All these people in a place you've never heard of before, Monroe, Michigan, right? They're all like intimately connected with the the grandmasters, whether you call it post-punk, whether you call it post-beat, whether you call it just music. And there's so many interesting sort of synchronicities that have happened in my life, and I'm profoundly grateful for. And I would like to talk about as well. I would like to give a shout out to some people that, for me are just um, have been absolutely brilliant. Okay, so I want to talk about Jeffrey Thomas. You talk about Jeffrey Thomas, right? I mean, he wrote the foreword to my book, The Doom Hippies 3. He wrote the foreword. Like to have somebody of that level, and I know that, Brian Keene is a huge fan of his, right? And he's just a very, very gracious, very humble guy. The first time I talked to him, I was watching a video. I was looking for Caitlin R. Kiernan stuff, right? I watched this video came up on YouTube of him and Scott and Caitlin reading together. And I was like, wait a minute, who's Jeffrey Thomas? Because this guy's imagination was crazy. He just seems so down to earth, but he's just like, he's is absolutely genius, right? So I want to give a shout out to Jeffrey, who's also has work in the Black Diadem, and John Palisano, right? John Palisano, who's right. He's a sweetie pie,
Yeah.
so nice, such a good guy, and so, unassuming, no ego. He'll help you out. And I think more often than not, you find people in this in our community are very gracious, with exceptions, but more often than not, what you were saying about like, people like Monteleone or Ketchum or and I would say count, Peter Straub and the
Oh
late
yeah, Peter and
Harlan
I go
Ellison,
way back.
right, yeah.
I miss him a lot.
Yeah, can we talk about, because we were friends on Facebook, but then, I was actually going to be on a panel with him, but I kind of chickened out because I felt like I wasn't ready to be on a panel with Peter Straub, But I didn't really know him. Could we talk about Peter Straub?
Sure, I'm always
Yeah,
willing to talk about Peter.
great. So, what are your some of your, fondest memories of Peter, and how did you first encounter his work?
Peter is actually the third person I ever met in the horror industry.
Wow.
It was at my first convention, and I didn't know anybody. I was just standing there at the cocktail hour on the first night. It was World Horror, and somebody came up to me and saw I was, lost. And her name was Monica O'Rourke. And she said, "Come on, I'll take you outside and introduce you to some people."
Yeah.
And she introduced me to Sephora,
Right.
to Peter, and to Jack.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh my God," and I'm not acting starstruck or anything. And we're chatting, and um, I ended up talking to Peter and Jack for probably 2 or 3 hours, and then drinking with them heavily. And then 2 nights later, when it's going to be the banquet, the award ceremony for the Bram Stoker Awards, at the time I was probably 40 or 50 pounds heavier than I am now, but just as bald. And I had on a gray suit.
I'm sorry, what year was this?
2005.
Okay.
Um, Peter had on a gray suit, and Peter was heavy and bald. They
Yeah.
both had the same glasses.
Yeah.
We were chatting out in the hallway, and then he went inside.
Yeah.
I'm talking to a couple of other people, and someone comes up to us, walks right up to me, and says, "Oh my God, I am so happy to meet you. This is amazing." And I'm kind of taken aback because at the time I probably had 4 or 5 short stories in print, and that was it.
Right. Yeah.
And they said, "I've wanted to meet you for so long. Will you sign my book?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, they're going to have me sign one of their anthologies."
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
They hand me a copy of Ghost Story.
Holy shit.
So my one
Dude.
friend, he goes, "They think you're Peter." I go, "Yeah, what do I do?" He goes, "I don't know." And he walks away. And I had no idea what to do. And I go, "Do you have a ticket for the banquet?" And they said, "No, I'm leaving right now."
Yeah.
Okay. I took the book and I signed it. Best wishes, Peter Straub.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Handed it back.
Yeah.
Never going to see them again, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then I go into the banquet and I sit down, and it turns out I'm sitting, my table's here. Peter's table is right next to me.
That's
So I
awesome.
said, "Oh, I got to tell him this story."
Yeah.
And everybody's like, "No, he's going to get mad." I go, "I don't know him that well, but I know he's not going to get mad."
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lean over, I tell him the story. He
Yeah.
starts laughing. If you ever
Oh
knew
my God.
Peter, when he laughs, he gets completely red in the face.
Yeah.
He starts laughing and laughing. And he goes, "Come on, let's take a picture." And back then, no cell phones. So I
Yeah.
actually had a little pocket camera. So the two of us take a picture together.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, I get it developed and I mail him a copy. And I signed it.
Right.
And I signed it Peter
Yeah.
as a joke.
Yeah.
So he writes back, he goes, "Send me another one."
Right.
So I did the same thing and sent him another one.
Yeah.
He sends one back to me, and under him, he writes JG. So
That's
I've actually
hilarious.
got it framed downstairs, and he had it in his office too. We used to always joke about that. Over the years, I mean, he was a mentor to me. Um, we did a lot of stuff together, went out drinking many times. Um, and then one of the funniest stories I remember is we were in New York for a convention one year. I think it was 2011. It was the first year that Glee came out, the TV show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. So he and his wife were huge fans of that show. And two hotels over from us, there was a Glee concert happening.
Yeah.
And he actually skipped the award ceremony
Oh,
so
wow.
that he and his wife could go to the concert. And when they came back for the cocktail hour and everything, they had like Hawaiian leis around them and
Oh, nice.
he was more excited about that than
Cool.
anything. And that's just the kind, I mean, he was like we were talking before, down to earth, friendly. He had a very low key, dry sense of humor, which I think was partly him and partly nurtured by his years living in the UK.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, we had a lot of good times. He was a good man.
One of the things that I really admired about him, and I became a fan, I think, 12, 13, 14 years old. I started reading him at the same time I read like, Stephen King. And that I was impressed because here was a writer who wrote like Ramsey Campbell, you know, like Ramsey Campbell, and gotta pay tribute to that. I mean, you know, um, he 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 wrote literature. This is
Hmm.
literature
He was
and
literary horror.
literary horror. And his first book was called Marriages, wasn't even horror. It wasn't even,
Right.
it wasn't even the genre. Um, but I fell in love with him, and first like Ghost Story, Shadowlands, and it made such an impression on me. And then many years later, his whole series of books that I'm blanking on some of the titles, but they're all interconnected. They all have the same characters, right?
Like Coco
Like
and some of the
Coco.
others.
Right, exactly. And or Mr. Was it Mr. something or other? Um, I've got them all in my garage here. But it made such an impression on me because it's you could do this with horror or whatever you want to call it, dark fantasy or whatever. You could have meta fiction. You can have multiple levels. You can have multiple concurrent stories. Some of them are, is like Russian dolls, like stories within stories within stories. And they all are beautifully kind of kaleidoscopic, right? You, I mean, much like a writer like I think, Jeff Vandermeer is really one of the most amazing, you know, not only authors, obviously, but also um, curators, and I think Jeff really recognizes the importance of looking at our beloved genres within the context of what, Clive Barker calls fantastique, right? Borges with Cortázar, with Burroughs, with Kafka, and looking at how the genre, particularly with somebody like Clive, very much influenced by, Burroughs and William Blake and so forth. You don't think of these as horror people, but they're, the whole concept, I think Clive's idea of the fantastique, you know, is really important. And I mean, do you have any thoughts about that or, about genre? Because there's a lot of genre policing and there's movements like Bizarro, which wanted to claim that you know, they invented themselves in Portland in the 90s. And not to disrespect John Skip, but, you know, come on, man. I mean, Bizarro is surrealism with references to iconic 70s TV shows.
Yeah, and I think two things are happening there. Anytime a genre, and they all start very small,
Yeah,
anytime they start to grow and branch out in different directions, I think there you reach some sort of boiling point, I guess you could call it, where the people who specialize in that genre or subgenre um, want a category for themselves. And I can understand it. I mean, if I write, um, if, if only for marketing purposes, if I'm writing Bizarro, I don't want to be confused with Charles L. Grant's Quiet Horror, and you can't always tell by titles.
right.
So they start to separate themselves. Just like in rock, first you had rock. That was it.
Right.
You had rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Yeah.
And then you had British rock and roll and American rock and roll.
Yeah.
And the British invasion came.
Right. Yeah.
And both of those were just modernizations of the blues anyway. And then you had um, what growing up we called hard rock. And we didn't call Sabbath and Deep Purple and Blue Oyster Cult metal back then because the word didn't exist. That's just a spam call. Sorry. Um, but then hard rock divided, and you had heavy metal, thrash metal, speed metal, death metal. You get all these different things. You've got soft rock, hard rock, and then in between those is just rock. And where do you categorize them? Like, is Aerosmith hard rock or rock? Or are they sometimes soft rock? I mean, some of those things overlap. Some of them are just silly labels that get slapped up on stuff like yacht rock. Well, nobody's going to tell me that Fleetwood Mac, the Beach Boys, and Steve Winwood are all the same.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't put them all in yacht rock. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work that way. But people do strictly to sell compilation albums or
Right.
have a special Pandora station. And the same thing happens with the genres. Um, if somebody says to me, "What do you write?" I say I write mostly traditional horror. I tell people if you like King, Kuntz, Straub, and early Straub, not his later, more literary stuff, you probably like me. But I also do Lovecraft. I do paranormal romance. I do dark fantasy. I do dark science fiction. I go, there's no category that encompasses all of that.
Yeah.
So I just say I write horror and dark fiction.
Yeah.
That's it. If people want to label it after that, I can't control that.
Yeah.
I've written a grindhouse book. I don't consider myself a grindhouse author.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of people like somebody like Skip or Shirley,
Yeah. Right.
you know, they are splatterpunk.
Exactly.
That's what they're known for.
Right.
But guess what? They write other stuff too.
They write other stuff too. And in
Skip,
fact,
you find out some of Skip's,
yeah,
pseudonyms. He's writing erotica.
I actually like I have a TypeScript manuscript from him that from a pitch that he made from with Mark Leventhal, you know. So I've got it's about this big. It's like a signed thing. Um but yeah, I mean, speaking of Skip and erotica, this is really, really interesting. So when back when I was doing actually Juggernaut, the magazine of extreme music, right? And I this is it okay, so let's talk about John Skip. So he and Craig went on tour with Iron Maiden in order to you know um, get log some experience that produced this little book, The Scream, and the people, a lot of people who are just coming up and aspire to do what, JG, Faherty and I do, and they've never heard of Skip Inspector. Wow. Or David J. Scow. Wow. Get on that, right? The Scream. So, when I asked John, I said, "Hey," because I know he's a huge metal fan as well, and as well as a musician. And I said, "Hey, could you write me something for my magazine?" And he said, "Sure." It wound up not publishing it, but that's another story. But this anecdote he was told me about Bruce Dickinson, and he said, so Bruce, when he and Craig were on tour with Maiden, that you know Bruce was just sort of thinking out loud. He's like, the spot. The spot. And John's like, what do you mean, Bruce? What do you mean by the spot? He said, when you're watching TV and then you click off the tube, right? And then it sort of eclipses and it's just a spot. And it's a very Spinal Tap moment. He said it was like,
Yeah.
and he said, what if that was a portal to another dimension? And I was like, oh my God, John, that's such a great concept. Somebody should write that story, because I don't think that Bruce ever wrote that story, but somebody should do that and call it The Spot. And and then I interviewed Bruce Dickinson, and that was incredible because their record label, Maiden's record label, kept calling me up and it's like, you gotta, they're got back together with Bruce and Adrian. You gotta get them that. And I was like, okay, yeah, you don't have to twist my arm, right? So, there I am, and it's like but first I needed directions because I was living in Pasadena at the time, in Pasadena, California, and so they were staying at a hotel. They were doing press thing at a hotel in Santa Monica, right? Which was right by the aircraft, whatever you call it, the landing strip or wherever. Bruce is also an airline pilot,
Right.
and so and they said, okay, so I said, Where is this hotel?" He said, "Well, I'm going to give you Bruce's number." I was like, and I said, "I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy." And he said, "Alex, you're a professional. What the hell?" I said, I'm just joking, man, So I call up this number and it's like, "Hey, is this Bruce Dickinson?" He's like, "Yeah." And I said, give me directions. I'm in Pasadena. He says, "Go south." So that's my Bruce Dickinson story. And he was really wonderful. And he remembered Skip. So anyway, so you also work in some other genres. We're talking about like paranormal romance. We covered that. We covered horror. Covered heavy metal horror to the extent that we could, because we could do another hour. I don't know what your time is, but so there's some other um, so let's talk about paranormal romance a little more because that's very intriguing to me. As far as I think that's kind of counterintuitive for people who, I mean, they seem like completely separate boxes, But then again, I look at the wall behind you, right? You got Bruce, you've got Zepp, you've got Priest, you got
Yep.
Sad Wings of Destiny, you've got the Cult, you've got Floyd, you have the Blues Brothers, you have Rush, and I actually worked with Martin Popoff, who's the world's biggest Rush fan, because just like you gotta respect, right? Canadian rock and roll. But I think that paranormal romance is a very, very interesting genre, and I want to learn a little bit more about that. Your characters and which of your books in that genre, if you will, that you would recommend to my viewers.
Well, I'd say it's going to depend on what age they are.
Okay.
If they're towards the younger side, I would say Ghosts of Coronado Bay. Um, for fans of Twilight,
Yeah.
It's about a woman who can see ghosts. And I got the idea actually. Did you ever watch that old show, The Ghost Whisperer?
I know what it was, but I haven't seen it. No.
So that she could see ghosts and they would tell her how they died and she had to solve the mystery.
Yeah.
So in
Wasn't
I've
that Jennifer Love Hewitt?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I never watched the show. I was too old to be, the target audience there, but I would see the commercials for it. And one day I was just watching the commercial and I said, what if not only could she see the ghosts, but when she was next to them, they became real, solid people.
Oh, wow.
And then when they separated, they turned back into a ghost again.
Yeah,
I said, all right, now I got the idea for, those things stick with you. I
yeah.
said, if it sticks, it's probably a good idea for a book. So I started fleshing it out a little bit. And I said, this is going to be something good for the teen audience. So what happens in the book is she's got this ability and she meets a ghost who's a boy and they kind of, have the hots for each other. Then she meets another ghost who's sort of a bad boy ghost and they have the hots for each other. And she finds out that one of them wants to kill her because if they kill her and basically drench themselves in her blood, they
Nice.
would become real and immortal forever.
Nice.
Right? She doesn't know who's who though.
Uh-huh.
So she's trying to figure out, she's afraid of both of them, but she
Wow.
likes both of them. And, her best friend is involved in it. And there's a big, climax at the end and everything. But it is for the younger, 12 to 18 audience.
Yeah.
There's talk of sex, but no sex actually happens. Um, one of the girls is actually in a like Let's Stay a Virgin club.
Yeah.
So it's a good book for the kids. And again, if you know like the whole um, Twilight thing, it's right up that alley. I've done some other stuff. Some of my short stories have been adult paranormal romance. If somebody wanted to read those, they could get either of my two short story collections
Okay.
because there'd be a couple of things in there. I did a fantasy paranormal romance, which was, I mean, truly high fantasy, wizards and swords and all of that, but with a female protagonist.
Nice.
Um, so a lot of what I've done though, 'cause paranormal romance can go from a love story that just has a little bit of paranormal
Right.
to paranormal with a little bit of love story.
All right. Yeah.
So one of my more recent novels is called Ragman,
Oh, interesting.
and it's about two detectives who used to be partners on the police force. They're trying to stop a mummy that's on the loose in New York City,
Nice.
and it's killing people. Problem is, they're both in love with the same woman, and
Oh, I
she
love it.
left one of them to go with the other.
Nice.
And part of it involved like a three-way situation.
Nice.
And now they both have girlfriends and they have to try and work together, and
Yeah.
nobody likes each other, but there's still that sexual tension there.
Sure. Yeah.
So I consider that like an adult paranormal romance.
Right. Yeah. And that completely threw me off what I was gonna say. I think I was gonna so we were talking about how in many respects this genre is very protean, it's very complex, it's very um there's so many young writers who we some of us older crustier folks might think they have if they I was at the Stoker Awards with when um uh Richard Matheson was the guest of honor and Harlan Ellison had a freak out blah 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 like that yes and have you read Bram Stoker or Mary Shelley, right? Oh, we need to talk about Mary Shelley. But um, and I work with in addition to, Jeff Thomas and Billy Martin and and Caitlin et al. Um, but I also have we're doing a couple of anthologies, which I would love to invite you, particularly like, the Caitlin R. Kiernan tribute. It's called The Language of Ruins. She said, I don't hate the title, so I was like, that's good enough for me, right? And as well as Exquisite Corpus, that's to help out. I mean, to the extent that any anthology is going to really, my dear friend Billy Martin, and Gray and Charlie Cross, and because they were having some real, you know, really a lot of challenges, a lot of burdens. And I would love to have some work, that is the one is for benefit anthologies. The other the Kiernan book is a it's for would have an honorarium for your work. I would love to have both and either from you, but in addition to those, the true masters of the craft, I, you know, in the process of, soliciting and going and wading through the submissions, to these anthologies, I've encountered people like Michael Adagio Kobe, and who's really incredible. He's a young up and coming. He's seems, you know, when his stories came over, I guess we used to call it over the transom. I don't even know if that makes any sense anymore. I don't even know what a transom is, but I remember reading about that in like Writer's Digest, right? Over the transom. What's a transom? So maybe that would be an anthology, over, over the transom, a literary tribute to transoms. I don't know, but or transgender transoms. Um, but I was really immediately struck by, I was like, you're like, Poppy Z. Bright circa 1992, you know. I mean, but new, you know. And then there's people like Nicole H. 6. Have you read Nicole's work?
No.
She's incredible. Yes, she is the daughter of Nikki Six, but we're not supposed to talk about that. But um, she started out with the IDW about a decade ago. She's been mentored by James Wan and Maybury, and um, and um, and was in Weird Tales with Campbell and the greats. But and we're collaborators. All this goes to say, this is my question: who are some of the up and coming writers that I mean, you work with high school students. I worked with high school students as well back in LA. Who are some of the really exciting new voices?
Exciting new voices.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's a good question. Because I see a lot of it through, mentoring in the HWA.
Yeah.
Um, I would say there's a woman called Mia Dahlia.
I know Mia.
Oh, okay.
I love
And
Mia. In fact,
she puts out great stuff.
yeah, she's going to be in our Barker book.
Oh,
And,
excellent.
and actually also in she's got work in a collective paw as well. Yeah. Yeah, Mia's great.
Okay. Yeah, definitely her and Joseph Murnane, Murnane.
I need to write this down. Yeah, because I collect writers like, or name. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's put out some very interesting stuff. Who else would I think of? Epiphany Ferrell, Ferrel. She's done a bunch of short stories. I know she's working on her first novel, but her short stories are fantastic.
Okay.
Um, who else? Who else would I think of? Larry Hinkle.
Larry Hinkle. Okay.
Uh, he did um, he did like the craziest book. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. Um, it's about a guy that goes hiking
Uh-huh.
and he takes this trail. It's the Eris Trail. That's the
Oh,
name of it. Um, and all of a sudden, the trail just leads you into completely another dimension.
oh wow.
And as you hike along the trail, you go from like one dimension to another. But he can't find his way back to our Earth,
Oh
and
my
he meets
God.
other people that are lost as well.
Yeah.
It's really, and there's like dinosaurs and
Oh man.
strange creatures and you
Yeah.
know different moons and all. It's really good. Um, yeah, those are all good. Who else? Um, Trying to remember. There's another guy too, and Michael Boatman.
Okay.
He does some crazy sort of Lovecraftian type of stuff. Those would be the tops on my list right now.
Okay, excellent. I'll reach out to them. Yeah. I was also going to add because you do a bit of like fantasy or so one of the books I'm working on, which is actually a sequel to the 2018 um, anthology we did called Dreams of Fire and Steel. And we had people like Byron Roberts from Bal Sagoth and Matthew Knight from Eternal Winter, got permission from Michael Moorcock to use Elric in a story. So we got official permission from Michael and Linda Moorcock. Thank you, Michael and Linda Moorcock. Can't believe I'm saying that, right? And we had work by the late great Kevin Candela. Um, I don't know if anybody knows who he is, but he was really vital. He's really, really great guy, and miss him a lot. And then we had so I decided to do a sequel because it's I love adore oh it um I always think of her now as the aunt of Lyric Lark Rivera, aka Neurodivergent Rebel, Ree Sheridan Rose, right? We had her on board, and then we got Stephen L. Shrewsbury. So you're like, what's the
Mhm.
question, Alex? Well, the question is, I would love to have something from you for Dreams of Fire and Steel 2, if that's something that, would maybe percolate for you because,
Um,
you know,
you can send me the details about it, and I'll
yeah,
take a look and
yeah.
see if it's something that I feel I can think of something for.
Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good. So let's see. I think probably because I don't want to take up, your time and um so I think I'll kind of wrap it up. Oh, we were going to talk about more rock star stories. So you sent me a whole list of so kind of tell me some of your favorite like, rock star encounters. I know you and Dee Snider had a like
Yeah,
an
growing up,
encounter. Yeah.
there was a bar in the couple of towns over from us
Hmm.
where all the New York bands and Jersey bands would come to kind of test out their stuff before they went on the big tours.
Right.
So you would see Blue Oyster Cult there, but that's when they would play as Soft White Underbelly.
Yeah.
So that before every album, they would come there and you know play a short gig.
Yeah.
Twisted played there probably
Nice.
every 3 months or so, and I knew the bouncers. We knew the owner. That's another story that I can tell later. So you'd hang out with such a small venue that you'd hang out with the band in between songs. They had to go past you to get to the bar. There was
Yeah.
no big green room in the back or
Right.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you met a lot of people. And then a few years later, um, when Dee had Widowmaker as his band, we saw them a couple times, and it was a good opening because he'd get off the stage and be like, "Hey Dee, remember when Twisted used to play at Manhattan's?" And
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like,
Right.
"Oh yeah, I remember you guys. Yeah, yeah." So you talk to him. So then I moved down here to North Carolina, and I see that there's going to be a movie premiere for one of Russell Crowe's new movies about it wasn't The Pope's Exorcist, it was called The Exorcism.
Yeah.
Um, and Dee is going to be there because he's opening his own movie production studio
Hmm.
in Wilmington,
Yeah.
pretty near where Kevin Williamson has his.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we gotta go. We gotta go.
Right.
So I get online and I get tickets because I want to say hi to Dee,
Right. Yeah.
And I had this cool idea. I'm going to give him one of my books because
Nice.
he's a big horror fan. He's
Sure.
starting a
Yeah.
horror production company. He needs material.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So standing out there, I get my, we get the special advance pass. So we're there at the door when Dee shows up and he's there with his wife. And I'm like, hey, Dee. And he's looking at me. He's like, giving you that look like he kind of recognizes, but he doesn't. I go, we used to drink together at Manhattan's
Right.
in
Yeah.
Rockland County. He
Right.
goes, oh shit, I remember you. Right.
Nice.
So I walk over, we're talking for a few minutes,
Yeah.
and I go, I know it's not normally how it's done, but you don't have an office yet. I go, I can't send this to you. I want to hand it to you. I know you like horror. I just want you to read it. I'm not pitching you anything. I just want you
Right.
to read the book.
Right.
And he's like, oh man. And he looks at it, he goes, this looks really good. And he looks at his wife and he's like, check it out. This guy wrote this book, blah, blah, blah. And he turns around and he goes, I'm going to go put it in my car. I don't
Yeah.
want to carry it during the movie. And his wife's like, the car left already. They parked over there.
Right.
He's like, oh shit. And now I'm thinking, what started as something good is now turning bad very
Oh
rapidly.
no. Oh
He's
no.
like, I'm going to have to give it back to you. He goes, because I don't have time to walk all the way back to that car.
Yeah.
And his assistant goes, don't worry, I'll put it in the car for you.
Right.
And he's like, oh, okay, that's
Okay.
fine
Yeah.
then.
Right. Yeah.
So then
Awesome.
and then he starts talking to other people. So I walk away.
Yeah.
We sit down in the theater. Guess who's sitting directly in front of me? Dee and his wife.
Dee Snider and his wife. Yeah.
And I'm like, my wife is saying to me, she's like, remind him about the book. I'm like, I'm not saying a word to him. I came this close to pissing him off. I want to leave things on a good note.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so the only thing we did was during intermission, I said, hey, because he got up and he was just, standing there. I'm like, hey, he goes, hey. And then when we left, I said, it was good seeing you again. And I just shook his hand and walked away.
Nice. Nice.
So, so
Lovely.
far, nothing's come of it, but maybe he'll read it someday.
Maybe, I mean, speaking of, I swore I wasn't going to do this. I feel a lot of the times I feel like the character Penelope on SNL, Kristen Wiig, right?
Hmm.
The one who she's always like, somebody says they play basketball and she says, I invented basketball. And so, whatever. I feel like that. I'm really terrible. But anyway, so because one of my best friends, his name is Emily Frank, right? She's worked with I think she's worked with um, um, Lansdale, okay, and she's worked with David Lynch and whatever. Her day job is she works for Billy Bob Thornton, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
Billy was a good friend of the late great Lemmy Kilmister, and Ace of Spades, right? So you know I love Lemmy so much, and he's actually in the Lemmy movie, right? So I reached out to Emily. I said, hey, I would love to I wrote a book called Bad Sunset, and I was originally I think Palisano was gonna publish it, but I wound up, like, long story, but I wound up publishing it myself. And it's a splatter Western, you know. And so I had a friend, it was actually a former friend, really long story I won't get into, but who was my friend for like a quarter century who was Lemmy's PA. Okay. And I told her about this, and she remembered Bad Sunset. She said, "You got to get that to Billy Bob Thornton." I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay, I'll try." So I, I, I called up Emily. I said, like, "Could you get Bad Sunset to Billy Bob?" She says, "Sure. You need to send it to me. You need to, sign it to him, and um, and I'll do what I can, But so she meets with him every couple of months. I think he was working on like uh, that show about the whatever oil or whatever, like I'm blanking on the
Landman.
Landman. Exactly. He was working on Landman, and then he came in and he'll come over to, or I don't know exactly if he has an office or he just meets up with Emily. And so she had all this mail for him because she runs his fan club, right? She's the and she's his web mistress. So she even wrote a book called Doing Time on Planet Billy Bob, right? And she says, okay, this is my good friend Alex S. Johnson. This is a novel he wrote, and he knew Lemmy, and I actually what I did was I did a whole drawing of Billy Bob as the Sling Blade character, and in the front of a Bad Sunset, I was like, "Hey, Billy, I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of yours. I admire you so much. I don't know whether you like this kind of genre of novel, but this is a book I wrote, and I would love for you to read it or not. Just like my respects, right?"
Right.
And so she hands it to him, right? And so I can say, truthfully, that a book that I wrote is in the hands of Billy Bob Thornton. Now, it might not have stayed in his hands. I don't know if it's in a, if he, whatever. I just know that. I also know that my book, The Death Jazz, which I wrote in 2012, um, was in the hands of Lemmy. And he even said to our mutual friend, who really not talking to each other, he said she kept bugging him, right? Every time she saw him, she was like, "Hey, Lem, what do you think of my friend's book?" I didn't want to send it to him. You know what I mean? Just like, quit while you're ahead, right? He's Lemmy. And it would be absolutely fucking devastating if he didn't like it, right? Be sort of like, if somebody, like if somebody had, wanted me to like send something to Harlan Ellison, I would be like, okay, so Harlan is a god, was a god. I wouldn't presume, but Shirley said wonderful things about the Dash Jazz. So did Ellen Mabey. So did Thomas S. Roche. So did I, some other people. And Lemmy said, "Not bad, not bad." And I was like, "Well, that's great."
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, because Lemmy he didn't play, he's like, he would say, "Oh, it was crap," right? He would
Right.
say, or he wouldn't say anything, but he said, "Not bad." So, you know, you know what I mean? Um, so, okay, please continue, because I swore I wasn't going to tell those stories, but, I'm with a fellow metal fan, right? It's joy. It's joyous.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Harlan because I do have a good Harlan story.
Ooh.
I mean, most people in the business do, but it was at World Horror one year in New York City, and I was working as a volunteer besides, attending. And my job was to take guests of honor from one panel to their next panel so that they didn't get lost. And I had just finished taking someone somewhere, and I hear people shouting and screaming. Con runners are running around. it's bedlam. I grab something. I'm like, what happened? What happened? And I hear this banging and I hear alarms going off.
Holy shit.
The elevator got stuck between floors with Harlan on it.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh
Oh,
no.
yes.
Yeah.
Harlan and his wife and three or four other people. His publicist was in there. It was like five people in the elevator. They ended up being stuck in the elevator for close to an hour.
Oh wow.
And I was standing by the door when it opened and they stepped out. And you can imagine how furious Harlan was. He was screaming bloody murder, threatening to sue people, saying he would never come to World Horror again, that, he wanted to talk to the manager of the hotel and the person in charge of the convention and all of this. He was just fit to be tied. So he goes storming off with his wife and his entourage behind him.
Yeah.
I step into the elevator and I see a gold pen on the floor.
Oh no.
So I pick it up, and I mean, there's only one person that it can belong to.
Right?
So the next time I'm able to locate Harlan is a couple of hours later at the mass book signing.
Yeah.
And he's again screaming bloody murder because he doesn't have his lucky pen.
Oh my
Someone
God.
must have stolen his lucky
Oh
pen.
no.
So I sneak over there and I get behind him and I go, Harlan, Harlan. He's like, what? I go, your pen was in the elevator. You dropped it.
Oh, oh
And
wow.
he looks at me. He goes, really? He goes, I go, yeah. He goes, wow, I've been making an ass out of myself. He goes, now I feel really stupid. He goes, you keep it. I go, what?
No
He
way.
goes, keep it. He goes, you're the only person I know that's honest enough to bring it to me.
Oh
He
my
goes,
God.
I don't need it. He goes, I got a dozen other pens. He goes, I was just making a point.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So
Oh,
yeah, I had that pen for a long time.
wow. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, and so you're talking about, by the way, Richard Christie. So um you know what I'm gonna ask, right? You
I
don't.
don't.
Okay, so I would love to, get some of my books in his hands. I would love for that to happen. Um,
Into Richard's hands?
yeah.
Okay. I can give you an address to send them to. It's his work address.
Okay, that's fine. That's
I'll
great.
email it to you.
Okay, great.
Um, he doesn't give out, even I don't have his personal
That's fine.
home
Yeah.
address.
I don't expect that. I mean, I have some addresses I can't I can't even disclose, but that would be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Um,
know he loves to read horror. He's a
yeah.
huge fan.
Yeah. I would just like to send him like, Axis of Evil and Hand of Doom and say, you know, I would maybe,
Anything metal oriented.
anything, right? Yeah. I also interviewed, I mean, uh Schuldiner, he was really awesome. He was amazing. I was actually at this show at I think it was the Whiskey in 1998, which was recorded for a live album, you know, and they were the headliners, right? They had, and I got to, you know, I went backstage and I was hanging out with like the very Swedish band called Hammerfall, right? And you know, um, and the Hammerfall. Well, you don't hear too much about them anymore. And then I met, you know, Chuck, right? And he had like cancer, obviously. We didn't know at the time. He was very private about that, but he was like he has his head, wrapped with a towel, and it's very, very, very kind, very gracious. And then, oh yeah, so I went off the rails again because neurodivergent. So um, I just remember that Hammerfall did a Now we can bring things around back to the priest. The Hammerfall did an encore. The whoever the singer, whatever, he he puts on like a Halford style leather daddy cap, and they encore with Breaking the Law, and everybody's kind of like going crazy, right? And oh, speaking of, so I have another anecdote. I want to share this with you because it's one of my favorites, and I've talked about this a lot, but it's still this relates to the Motorhead tribute, which is how we know each other initially. And actually, I want to talk about your story that's based on Burner, which is also, collected in the Black Diadem, right? So this was in 2011, and I was invited by my friend, I'm not going to name, who was known as the rock star whisperer. And I just remember she sent me a photo of her in a limousine, the back of a limousine with Lem, and he's got this very, very open body language, right? He's like, yeah, I'm here, right? You know, this is the equipment, he was total open body language, right? And she's sitting there being the rock diva, the goddess that she is. And so we were invited backstage. When I say backstage, I mean we were standing above the stage. So there's Motorhead down there, right? There's the audience over here, and we were standing like above Murder One. And I'll never forget this. So he's like, yeah, I'd like to bring out a good friend of mine, Sherry Curry, right? And it's like the crowd goes apeshit, looking down, and it's all these young people. And I think, wow, it's, the I'm, the 15, 16, 17-year-old version of me is going squee, right? You're standing behind Murder One. You're just like you're backstage. You're a guest of Lemmy. That's magic, right? That's rock royalty. And he's like, yeah, I'd like to bring on Sherry Curry, right? Because they would always have a rocker chick to do like they had Doro, right? And so this time they had Sherry Curry. Because Lem was, you know, like I think, I mean, he was friends with all the Runaways, and I'm pretty sure that even Joan Jett and Lem, couldn't resist. I mean, obviously, right? Even though she's gay, but anyway, because he was Lemmy, so they go into it. Crowds going ape shit, and looking over them, and I see all these young people, right, who weren't even like born when Ace of Spades came out, you know, and like this is magic, absolute magic, right? So after the show, you know, we go in like we're already backstage, so we don't have to travel, very far, right? You go into another room. There's Sherry Curry. There's the guy, their then producer at the time, Campbell something, not Campbell. That's the guitarist Phil Campbell. And then Mickey's there, Mickey D, and then no wait, that was later. So then we're hanging out backstage. I'm talking to the producer. Then we go and we wait outside of Phil Campbell's dressing room, right? And he's so so then we're given admittance, and to the inner sanctum. And my former friend, the rock star whisperer, comes up to me and she says, "Hey, Phil just gave me this beverage," and I said, "Wow, you seem wired." And she said, "Yeah, man, it's the Lemmy drink, right?" It was like, I mean, Nikki Six talks about this in the movie. He says, and it's an ingredient which we shall not disclose. Of course, it's speed. So it's like rum and coke and amphetamines, not meth. right? Because Lemmy was not stupid, right? It's amphetamines. And so she's like wired to the gills, you know. I was like, right on, right? So we go in there and then we're all smoking like fiends. So the room is like full of like this haze, right? And then we're like admitted to the Lemmy dressing room. So, you know, so there was only four of us. So like three of us come in. I say, "Oh, the three musketeers," right? And then I come in, he says, "Oh, the fourth musketeer." And he says, "Hey, Alex, I've got you know, I promised you to buy you a beer." And I was like, "Yeah, wow." So that happened, right? And so he hands me this, he goes to the fridge in there, and then he hands me like a Miller beer, and I was like, I drink the beer, trying to be cool, but of course, you know, I think Lem would appreciate the fact that nobody could be cool in that situation. But as cool as you can get, right? I mean,
Right.
trying to be like LA cool, which is understated, you know, like Charles Bukowski, you know, is very understated. You know, you don't get excited about things. Even like, "Squee, oh my God, it's Lemmy." And then I said, "Hey, Lem, could you sign my beer?" He said, "Sure," right? So one of the things that I really loved about him was that he always gave people, he made you feel smart, right? And he would always, very, very gracious man, he would always give you an opportunity to make it seem like you were helping him, right? So he hands me a pen and he says, with the cap on, and he says, "Could you help me? You know, could you help me? Could you pull off the cap?" Of course, you know, he doesn't need help pulling off a cap, right? It's like it's him kind of, you know, it's the magic of the man, right? The magic of the man is that, and I think we can talk about people like Dallas Marr or people like Peter Straub, you know, or Harlan, you know, Ellison, um, that they empowered you. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm helping Lemmy. So I pull off the cap and he signs my beer, you know, and then, you know, we're talking about, because I had just read Neon Angels, you know, the Sherry Curry memoir, and just happened to be a huge Runaways fan. This was years before I actually met Carrie Lee Crum, you know, but that was, and we talked about the fact that she had been kidnapped by a serial killer and all these incredible things that she endured, right? And then that was, I mean, that was it. And he changed into a kind of a just a regular suit, and he, you know, he wasn't wearing the Lemmy outfit. He was just wearing a regular suit. It was like he had a hot date for the night, right? I just remembered he wasn't as tall as I thought he was. Yeah, I think he was like 5'11" or something like that. But I always remembered him as like as this enormous person, right? He is just a few inches taller than I am. And I just will never forget that. He was like, he was ready for his date. And it was just a regular guy. It was Ian Fraser,
Yeah.
Kilmister, right? English gentleman, you know, signing off. And that was 2011. It was the last time I ever saw him. And he died in 2015. So that's one of my Motorhead stories. And so okay, I wanted to ask you, and this is probably the last thing, about the genesis of your story that you wrote, which I have included, and also I'm included in Iron Fist, a literary tribute to Motorhead. Talk about that story.
So when you broached the subject to me and I decided I was gonna, have to find a song, um, there was what, a list of like five or six that were already taken.
Yeah,
So I said, and this is what I always try and do whenever I write something for a, s- a music themed anthology.
yeah,
I try and find something obscure.
right.
Um, as obscure as, a popular band can be.
Right.
Their
Yeah.
songs, the fans are going to know them all.
Of course.
Um, and flipping through the lyrics of the different songs. And when I came to Burner, the first line in there, riots in the burning street, crystal night outside, and I've got it pulled up in front of me so I can read
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
Um, Brutal music in the night, enough to make you cry. There was something about that linked with the theme of fire
Yeah.
that just conjured this image in my head of let's go in the complete opposite direction of not only what this song is about, but what most people who listen to Motorhead would feel that their songs in general are about. Um, and by that, I'm talking about just the regular metal fans, not people who know Lemmy personally or study the lyrics or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's a song about demons. A
Right.
lot of Motorhead songs on the surface, it's you know, demons and hell and
Right. Yeah.
drinking, and
And
all of it.
drinking. Yeah.
I'm like,
And
so
girls.
what
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
what if we take this though and we go the complete other way and make it religious and we can still keep the violent, terrible aspect of it, but go with something that's almost like Christian mythology.
Interesting.
And as soon as I thought of that, it came to me that it would be the Four Horsemen.
Right. Yeah.
And it would have to be the specific, um, uh, I forget which one he would be. He was death. He wasn't pestilence or anything.
Yeah.
So I
On a
just
pale
remember a
horse.
long
Yeah.
time ago reading about a chariot of fire. And it
Yeah.
was probably in one of those like Eric von Daniken books or something like that.
That you know where that comes from, right? Blake.
Blake, the old poet?
Yeah. Blake.
Oh, okay. I don't know all of his stuff. I know Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright.
That's a good one.
Um, so I said, that's it. This song is going to be about, that chariot of fire and the coming of the apocalypse and everything.
Yeah.
And I am the truth, the liar turned around. I'm the voice to drive you mad. Burner, burner, burner. So
Right.
right there, it was like he's going to set the world on fire.
Right. Yeah.
And from there, I mean, it was just a matter of, the story writing itself, but me making sure that I didn't use any lyrics from the song. I
Yeah.
wanted to be themed by the song,
Yeah.
but not about the song.
Right.
Um, so I just took it as, and I don't want to give too much away for people who are going to buy the book.
Right.
It's basically about a guy who becomes that angel of death,
Yeah.
and fire is the weapon by which he destroys.
I love that. And I also I'm just thinking as you were talking about how so many of Lemmy's lyrics are work on multiple levels, and I don't think every casual fan appreciates what an absolute genius he was. I mean, on the one level, okay, you're absolutely I absolutely agree with you. He's talking about demons and Burner and other songs. I think there is even a song called Demons, and there's the song, there's a, you know, and there, as you know, it's like demons blind your eyes, Burner,
Yeah.
Burner anyway, which is actually, a reference to Monty Python, but on one level, he's talking about absolute reality, and he's talking about like Kristallnacht, right? He's talking about, you know, um, something fires in the burning streets, crystal night outside, right? He's talking about like when it's 1930, was it 1933 or so, or Kristallnacht may have been later, and which was a high holy day for the Nazis. Oh my God, I can't believe what's going on these days. Speaking of Nazis, Jesus Christ. so as you know, he was a student of history, so and especially a absolute master of it was absolute I would probably say he could have taught history as a professor, which would be sort of like having who was that wonderful comedian who died way too early? You know what I'm talking about, right? That who the one who screamed. I just
Oh,
watched
Sam Kinison.
Sam Kinison, right? I just watched a documentary about him. He was actually a preacher, right? So
He was a no, he was a Baptist minister.
he was a Baptist minister, exactly. And so incredible, one of my all-time favorites. I mean, so 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 I think that also, a matter of fact, for people who don't know, who haven't read Plato, for example, they don't realize that lines like when the mode of music changes, you know, the walls around the city shake. That's from Plato. That's over your shoulder, right? That is
Yeah,
it was the absolute genius. And also for a guy who wrote songs like God Was Never on Your Side and Bad Religion and Orgasmatron, the guy quoted Jesus a lot, you know? He
yeah,
quotes the scriptures a lot too. And even in bad religion, or especially in bad religion. And I just wanted to say that, what you're talking about at that one level, which is a very important level, apocalyptic Christian, you know, mythology and the four horsemen, right? It's absolutely relevant to understanding, what Lemmy was all about. And also, I think that he would have, I like to think that Lemmy would have appreciated what I'm doing or what we're doing, the collective paw, I like to call it the collective paw, because I think what I aim for with these anthologies is to enhance your appreciation of the original music. So I like to think that, for example, with the Bauhaus books, we have literal David J. Haskins. I always try to get the the original people involved as much as humanly possible. I'm doing a Blue Oyster Cult book, so having this, yeah, okay, yeah, it's called what the hell did I call it? Tyranny and Mutation, a literary tribute to Blue Oyster Cult. And
yeah. Send me the details.
okay, man, I will. Um, So I guess that's kind of it because the oh yeah, so what I wanted to say is that I always, because John Shirley has been incredibly kind to me over the years, and I kind of want, and also I actually had, I mean, you know was Michael Moorcock, has been very gracious to me too.
Black Blade.
Black Blade, right? And I even was in contact with Patti Smith. But you know, Patti Smith is Patti Smith, right? So and we had a very, very brief exchange on Facebook of all places. But I love, absolutely adore Blue Oyster Cult. And I was Facebook friends with Bloom, so I think you would absolutely adore this book, and I think so. I always try to get as much as possible the real people, and having David J. Haskins' endorsement. I'm going to just show you the Bauhaus book because it's a thing of beauty, and then I'll probably kind of want to wrap it up. So here is the well, we're doing the funeral director's cut of this book because we've had brought along some more people on board, and we're kind of wanting to cut some people. But this is okay. This is a Christmas card from the wonderful Emily Frank, who was part of the original. It was called Dear Bela, this chapbook that was done by. It was originally going to involve Viggo Mortensen, but he was off in New Zealand doing a little film called Lord of the Rings, right? And so Richard Modiano from, Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, I mean, not, was it? Yeah, Literary Arts Center in Venice Beach, right? And there he was the executive director of, and he was friends with, Burroughs and Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg and all that stuff. And then Mark Olmsted, who was an associate of Ginsberg, Emily Frank, and Mark and some other people, and they got together in Bela Lugosi's last known residence, and they watched Dracula, 1931, Bela Lugosi film with Todd Browning, I believe, was the director. Oh, we need to talk about Shelley, but and then they listened to Bela Lugosi's dead, of course, as one does, and they they went, they were this is literally where the apartment complex where Bela Lugosi had died, and they communed with the spirit of Bela, and they produced something called, I think I have it here. I just happen to have it here with me. Of course, I'm not that organized, so um, but chances are I may not be in here, but if the luck of is good. Oh yeah, I'm more organized than I thought. This is called Dear Bela. This came out in 1998, and it was published by um, Emily Frank, and it was edited by Mark Olmsted and Carly Archiebeck. Now, last year I started the process because of I had the sanction of David J. Haskins. Shout out to David J. Can't believe I'm saying that. And he endorsed the Burroughs book and contributed original material to it. And so I thought, well, it's a natural. Everybody loves Bauhaus. Everybody loves Love and Rockets. They're iconic. And so I thought, well, I've got all these wonderful people. I reached out to Jarbo. I reached out to Caitlin Kiernan. I reached out to Shirley. I reached out to Palisano. I reached out to Carrie Lee Crum. I reached out to a number of different people. And I said, and I asked specifically, I asked David J, would you endorse this? So yeah, right. This is officially endorsed by Bauhaus, the founder of Bauhaus. A White and White, a literary tribute to Bauhaus, and forward by Billy Martin, Poppy Z. Bright, edited by yours truly. It's got Caitlin, it's got Yangbo Ma, a very well-known Chinese um, poet, John Shirley Jarabo, right? Um, Ethan Marolis from Black Tape for a Blue Girl, Spawn Ranch, Vampire Rodents, and Noir. Um, some new people that I brought on board, Tara Vanflower from Lycia and Typo Negative, and then Michael H. Hansen, who's a Riesling award-winning author and one of my favorite people, and David J. Haskins himself. And I just wanted to show that to you because, like you know, like Hand of Doom, um, which was one of the other books that we did. I want to like have. I don't just want. I mean, a lot of tribute anthologies and a lot of presses do tribute anthologies, but I think because of my background in music, so I can reach out to a Jarbo or whatever and say, hey, would you like to be part of this? And they'll, I mean, I haven't had anybody turn me down except Steven Severin from Susie and the Banshees, who initially was on board with one of our books, and then he flaked out. So, but I mean, 99.9% of the time when I reach out to people, they're excited about it. They're not just on board. They're like gung ho. They're even more gung ho than me in some respects. For example, the Poppy Z Bright book, you know, like if I post something and I tag Billy Martin, you know, chances are at best I'll get what I call a tepid blue like, which I'm sort of obsessed with, like, wanting only full love hearts, but it's just me, right? But just getting a like from Billy Martin is sort of like being blessed. You know what I mean? And so then I reached out to my old friend Patrick Califia, the author of Macho Sluts. Can't believe I'm saying that. And I asked him, I said, "Hey Patrick, would you like to contribute to the Poppy Z Bright book?" And he said, "Of course," right? So I tagged him on a little, a promo, right, for Exquisite Corpus. And then like um Billy was ecstatic, and then Patrick was ecstatic, and then Patrick wrote, "You dear man," to Billy, and I was like, "Oh, how cool is that, right? How cool is that? I mean, you know, that there that I can do these things, I can bring people together." And so I feel very fortunate. I'm fortunate to have you on board, JG Faherty. You people just call you JG, is that
Yeah, that's
okay?
JG is fine.
Okay. One last thing. Mary Shelley. You're related to Mary Shelley.
Yes. Found out well, probably like 4 years ago or so, one of my cousins did one of those family trees,
Yeah.
and it turned out that Mary Shelley was a relative on my paternal grandmother's side.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and you're going back, 7 generations or
Sure.
something,
Yeah.
but it was still interesting and a nice little thing to add to the bio.
Yeah. What do you, I mean, besides, we can talk a little bit about Frankenstein. So, w- um, so Mary Shelley was also, queer. I mean, long before it was acceptable. Is married to Percy, you know, was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley,
Right.
and her uncle was I think it was their father or uncle was William Godwin. So I forget. So anyway,
I don't
so
remember.
it's at age of 19, in the company of Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley and John Polidori, was the breakout talent of the evening as a storm raged over, you know, Villa Diodati. And they were ingesting copious amounts of drugs, including laudanum, and freaking out. um, and, seeing, Percy like saw, you know, somebody's eyes, like eyes on a woman's breasts, you know, and the Ken Russell movie is actually kind of accurate, as wild as that is, there the whole genre of science fiction is, we would not understand it without Frankenstein, but it's also one of the first proper horror novels. And we just talk about Frankenstein because it's
And it's
impossible to divest horror and science fiction from Frankenstein.
and it's funny that you bring it up that way. I've always been of a slightly different opinion on it in that, and it goes back to what we were saying before about genres and subgenres.
Yeah,
Science fiction was around before then, but it all dealt with like trips to the moon or trips to other planets,
right.
that sort of thing. So to me, Frankenstein is more of the first horror sci-fi crossover
Interesting.
because in many respects, I mean, the only science fiction aspect of the whole thing is that electronics, electrical apparatuses were used to bring Frankenstein, the monster,
Yeah.
to life. I mean, sewing the corpse together, that's not science fiction. That's just grotesque, really. That's morbid. Um, but, and then Dr. Frankenstein having the knowledge to do that, having the willpower to do it, having the means to do it, to me, that's medical horror,
Yeah.
not science fiction. I mean, not in the way that we think of science fiction today, which
Yeah.
is, space travel and ray guns and all of that kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very different uh, kind of science fiction. The kind of science fiction that you would say is more like uh, Michael Crichton
Oh yeah.
with
Or
some
or
of his medical thrillers.
or Robin Cook.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
So to me, it's much more one of the earlier works of horror sci-fi crossover because the horror aspect is definitely much larger in it
Yeah.
and more important than the sci-fi aspect of it. And that's what they were all there trying to do that night
Right.
was write something to scare each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
They weren't trying to write science fiction. I mean, Polidori wrote that terrible vampire story.
Yeah.
Uh, but sci-fi was around a long time before that. And obviously, horror was around a long time before that
Yeah.
as well. Um, but I think that was the first time somebody had taken the two and really tried to put them together.
I think you're right, and I think that it's interesting because you know so obviously HWA has the Bram Stoker Awards. There's another interesting aspect which has to do with queer authors, which I don't think a lot of people know that Bram Stoker was gay as fuck, and he, I mean, if you don't believe me, then check out his love letters to Walt Whitman, right? But that's just so from the beginning, this whole notion of genre purity, which I don't know anybody besides the Bizarro people who believe that there's, that their genre was birthed like, Minerva from the head of Zeus or whatever, But anyway, I need to not talk about that. But so genre, there was, genre blending, it was the first genre defying horror novel, right? Because it wasn't a purist novel, right? It had medical horror, science fiction, horror, and also classical archetypal Greek mythology, modern Prometheus, and
And also Gothic.
goth. So we could talk about that, like, for example, the Castle of Otranto, Horace Walpole, and Anne Radcliffe, and even Jane Austen, right, wrote a kind of a parody of, something Abbey, right, that she wrote because she was it was mentored by Anne Radcliffe, something Abbey, it was North, it wasn't Northanger Abbey, right?
I
And
don't know.
okay, so I'm a huge fan of all those. Wuthering Heights, right? It's another classic gothic, really gothic horror. If you think about it, because that's got some scary ass ghost shit in there,
Exactly.
right? So from the beginning, I'm going to talk about paranormal romance. Heathcliff, it's me, Kathy. I've come home now. So cold. Let me into your window. Anyway, um, so from the beginning, there has been not anything approaching genre purity, right? And Edgar Allan Poe, for example, created the detective story. He wrote
Hmm.
science fiction. He wrote, in different genres. And he was very much influenced by the German Romantic Gothic writers, you know. And actually, if you think about it, like the Fantastique goes way, 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 way back to the beginning of, Beowulf, right? I mean, Beowulf is a monster story, you know.
Horror has been around since they were cavemen.
It says that, what do you think was the first? I always like to think about this kind of like, well, maybe I won't go down that road. So, what was the first story? Maybe you answered this question, but what was the first story that you sold? And then what was the first major market you cracked?
The first story I stole was to a little book. It was about local ghost legends.
Hmm.
And I mean, it paid pro rates, but it was one of those ones that's only sold in like, local bookstores and side
Yeah,
of the road kind of places. You're never going to find it in Barnes and Noble or anything.
yeah.
Um, the first major market I cracked was Cemetery Dance.
Nice.
And that was in 2007, I think, probably about 5 years after I sold my first story was when I got into there. Um, it was a story called Bones, and it's about it takes place in the hills of North Carolina, and very foretelling that someday I would move down here.
Wow.
It was about a guy and his sister, I should say half sister, who they're kind of hillbillies and they're married
Yeah.
and their families have always interbred.
Well,
And because of that, they've kind of got some unusual abilities.
it sounds like, I don't mean to cut you off, but it sounds a little bit like Edward Lee territory.
Well, not as graphic or
Not as
violent as
graphic.
Edward
Yeah.
Lee. Um, but like for him, he's born with six fingers on each hand.
Oh, wow.
And that gives him the ability whenever he touches or is near anything that's made of bone, not a person, but just like raw bone, like
Nice.
out of the body kind of bone.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he can tell how that creature or person died.
How original.
And then his sister wife, her ability is that she can always tell if somebody's telling the truth or not. So the local sheriff who raped her when she was 13 um, comes to them because there's some murders happening in this small town
Yeah.
and they need to find out how they're happening and who's doing it. So he brings the bones of one of the victims to him
Oh,
and he
wow.
has to touch the bones.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
what happens is he doesn't just see how the person dies, he feels the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, so he kind of, experiences that. So they figure out that the person, I want to say person, part creature, who's doing the killings is one of these. Remember the old stories when we were growing up? You'd hear them all the time of somebody had a mutant baby and it lived under the stairs for
Oh,
their
yeah,
whole
yeah,
life.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Well,
Urban
this is
legends
like
or
it's like
yeah,
one of those, but it
yeah.
got out.
Oh, shit.
And it's the son of the town of the guy who owns the town bank, and he's
Oh,
also the
nice.
mayor.
Okay.
So the sheriff has to kill the kid, but they can't let the mayor know. And then the mayor finds out.
Uh-huh.
It's all like small town inbred politics going
Nice.
on at the same
Nice.
time. And I actually did like five or six stories with them as the characters. But that was the one that sold first.
That's great. So
And
that was
it was into
Cemetery Dance.
Cemetery Dance.
That's so what issue?
Geez.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking 2007. I'm
Okay.
lucky I remember the names of the characters in the stories.
I didn't, I've never, okay, so yeah, so
I
it
know it
says,
was in the Charles Grant tribute
oh wow.
issue.
I probably read that. you
It
know,
had an octopus on the cover.
yeah, I probably read it because I had a subscription. So, I've never even like I've never, submitted to Weird Tales. I've never submitted to Cemetery Dance. Well, I did, but it's a long story. But I've been reviewed there. And, shout out to Joshua Gage, right? So, and Brian Keene. Thank you. Brian Keene. Great, great master of the craft. And so I guess, well, yeah. So I always like to keep a bit of like, like Stephen King would always say about writing, it's like, when you like leave off writing, sort of like stop eating when your appetite is still keen. So when you come back to it, so I think we've had an incredible, couple of hours here, and actually more than a couple of hours. But so I will touch base with you as far as the next step. So, we're talking about the release of Axis of Evil. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Blue Oyster Cult. So I think maybe just focus on those and then Motorhead book. And so
Yes, send
then
me that info. I definitely want to see it.
okay, so been a real pleasure.
Absolutely. I loved it.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll
Thank
and
you for
I'll
having me.
thank you and I'll be posting this soon.
Okay, great. Give me the links and I'll promote.
Okay, take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.